Hey, how you doing? What are 3 triggers that keep you stuck, keep you from reaching your big, bold life and biz? In other words, these 3 triggers, they stop you in your tracks. They freak you out. They create all kinds of sabotage. You undermine yourself. Oh, you might get paralyzed with fear. Or you just might say, screw it. I'm not doing that. Or maybe you become little, negative with your talk, your self-talk, or the words you're saying to people. Or you just screw up. Basically, that's it. These 3 triggers can make you screw up. So let's get to it. The other day we talked about mindset, or your thinking. We've talked about those blind spots that just, judgment and your fear of success and fear of failure. And so this is just one more piece of that puzzle about the way that you think is creating your reality, creating your life and biz. And these triggers, once you're able to identify them, once you're able to see, this is going to trigger me, then you can actually put a plan into place. Then you don't have to be just like some knee-jerk reaction. Then you don't have to feel bad about yourself because you just screwed up again, or you sabotage yourself. It's really that simple. Well, I say it's that simple. It sounds simple. It takes some practice. Okay, are you ready? So here are the 3 triggers. So I'm going to tell you what they are, and then I'm going to go through and explain them. And then I want to give you some bold action tips that you can put into place to help you identify them, help you get to the point where you can have a plan in place and you can just be proactive and not get triggered. Not practice, right? Okay, so number 1, situational trigger. Number 2, a relational trigger, relationships. And number 3, a physical trigger. So let's get into this. Ready? So a situational trigger might be, and first of all, you need to identify what the behavior after the trigger is, because that's really important. So not only is it whatever leads up to it, you might not know, then the trigger thing happens, and then your behavior happens after that. So let me give you an example of, quote, behavior that could happen after that. When I said you could sabotage yourself, but what does that look like? It could mean that you don't follow up with a client. You don't try and close the deal. You don't schedule something. It could also mean that you go binge and pig out. It could also mean that you drink. It could also mean that suddenly you feel sick or you start getting burnt out. So these behaviors, again, it could be that you're yelling at your kids, whatever. So number 1, situational. So for example, like this Facebook Live, I could just be like totally freaking out. It could trigger me to eat. It could trigger me to, forget to push play, which by the way, I did that one time. I forgot to push it could trigger me to whatever. I don't get triggered like that anymore because I recognize if I'm speaking live, whether in person or online like this, I used to get triggered. Maybe you do too. Maybe situations cause you to panic or freak out. So what are some other situations? So whether it's a Facebook Live, maybe it is going and doing some other marketing, maybe it's networking, maybe it's working out. What is a situation in your life where you realize after that event happens, after that trigger happens, you don't like your behavior afterwards? That's the clue. Once you can identify the pattern, I don't like when I do that. What caused me to do that? Let's back it up. Okay, ready? The next one is relational. Okay, so I'm going to share a little story here. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I could get triggered by my family. Can I get a high five? Can I get a heck yeah, Mary, I totally relate to you. Totally relate to that. And so I'm so glad you're here. So if you know someone who needs help with their thinking, their mindset, or you know somebody who's sabotaging themselves, share this. Share this right now or share this later. And for those of you who are watching the replay, comment. Give me some love, give me some hearts, give me some thumbs, and feel free to email me. I always get back to you. I personally do. I don't farm that stuff out. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mary Bicknell. I'm the creator of the Big Bold Life and Biz method. And I take my background as a head shrinker, psychotherapist, my years of behavioral training as a cognitive behaviorist, my years as a sales trainer, and I've compiled that into creating this, becoming a life and business strategist for business women who are stuck and they don't want to be stuck anymore. They're done being stuck. Part of being stuck are these triggers. Got it? So we're talking about relational. So being triggered by your family. I don't know about you, but there's just something about it when I think about calling my mother. Now, I'll share that story another day. Those whispers of the past, those ghosts of the past. But that would trigger me. Or before John and I would go see his mother, I almost feel like I need to whisper. Before we would go see his mother or his parents, we would sit in the car and we would be like, okay, Jesus, dear universe, we remember that we are grown adult humans that have a baby. Because sometimes you go into that and you become triggered, and before you know it, you're 40 years old, but you're 15 again. Other ways that I've noticed clients get triggered by a relationship is a client relationship. Now, if we have to dig under the hood here and go into a little bit of the head shrinker mode, it's not uncommon that your relationship with your client is going to bring up some stuff with you. And maybe it should to a point. You don't allow that to glump onto your client, but they might challenge you. They might, you're helping them and you're just like, here's my great product here. I really want to help you. And maybe they say something that, and let me give you an example. I've had a client just be like, God, Mary, sometimes you're so pushy. Well, that's kind of why you hired me, to help kick you in the butt while I'm giving you a hug. But also it triggers me a little bit. I have to be aware that those ghost voices of my past, where it's like, you're too much, Mary, you're too bold, you're too big, you're too this, it could make me want to retreat. I have to be really conscious of that so that I stand in my power and recognize that when someone makes a comment, it's really about her most of the time. Sometimes you have to take that in, am I being really pushy? Am I go for it? My pushiness looks like, look, you can do it. This is what the plan was. I know you want to take some action. What's making you afraid right now? Let's get a system. That's how I'm pushy, by the way. But relationships. So relationship also, when it comes to a client, might be where you're actually in a sales conversation. Now, I know, we are fearful sometimes of being, quote, pushy and salesy and arm twisty. And so when we get on the phone, we're so conscious of that, or we have a sales presentation, we're so conscious of that we actually do the complete opposite. So I wonder if you recognize that about yourself. If you are someone who gets triggered by relationships or sales conversations, put a little, yeah, I get it. Give me the little bit of heart down here. Say yes. One of the little tips I can give you, I can help you with that, is I have a sales script. It kind of walks through everything, goes through the psychology. In fact, I just did a training on the 2 most powerful questions you need to master. But anyhow, this sales script is called, it's marybicknell.com/closing the deal. It'll help you walk through so you're not feeling pushy, and maybe help you so you don't get triggered with relationships. Or so even let's talk about your husband. Sometimes we get triggered by our husband. He says something, or our kids, right? You're just not ever around, mama. You're just not good enough, or I hate you, or whatever they say. I know River right now, she can get into having a little bit of attitude that triggers me, where she's so direct. Hello, she's my child. What I expect. The next one is physical. Okay, so this one I want you to really become aware of. Because I believe that oftentimes we are just what I call a floating head of to-dos. Our list of things to do is so long, and we're just like, in our head thinking, oh my God, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, got to do that. And then we're in a situation, or we are in a problem comes up, and we're rationalizing through it. But if we could be connected physically, we might recognize like, oh my God, I have a pit in my stomach. I have a pit in my stomach, or I'm just sweating, or I'm shaking, or I'm not sleeping. That's a sign. Those are things that, you get triggered physically. You have to pay attention to what that means. And we often just brush that aside. You can call it your sixth sense. You can call it your intuition. Let's give a really easy example. You're walking down you're shopping on a couple days before Christmas. And the only time you have to shop is like 10:30 at night. So you're popping to the mall and you've got bags and you're just carrying all these bags. And the hair on the back of your neck pops up. That's a physical trigger that this environment is a problem. And this happens too. Let me give you some business related examples. You know this sometimes when you walk into a room. Have you ever walked into doing networking and you walk in and just physically you're feeling, now granted, some people are anxious because they are nervous about saying, well, what do I do? And how do I explain what I do? And so be conscious of that. Like, oh, I'm anxious. My breathing is increased. What is this trying to tell me? So I want you to think of some of your triggers. Also, they're kind of like we talked about the other day, making friends with your fear. It's the same thing with triggers. All of this is about you being curious about how you show up in the world so that you can make these adjustments, that you can make these tweaks and you can make these changes so that you really do have a better life. You do have better relationships. You are making more money. You are making a big difference. You're not wasting and squandering your beautiful time in life. So let's review those real quick. Ready? Situational. Are you walking into a situation that just stinks, right? You're just like, this is, So when you recognize that, and then you recognize after you knew it stunk, you knew you were like, what the hell am I here for? And then you were mad at yourself, and then you didn't work out, or you laid on the sofa, or you didn't follow through, or whatever it was. Recognize that behavior. What was that situation? Trust your gut. You are so powerful. You know so much. It's just being in touch with it. The next is relational. Again, in your life and in your biz. What kind of relationships trigger you? Kind of goes back to that fear of judgment, where your sister says something or a friend says something like, oh, you really think you're all that by having this big business or whatever. What kind of relationships are triggering you to feel bad or triggering you to be inspired? So get rid of the crappy ones and find some more of the supportive ones. And finally, physical triggers. Have you ever had somebody just walk into the room and you just immediately, it's like their energy and your physical body responded? Those are all signs. But it's also the sign, physically when you close that deal and you're so excited, or you sign a new client, or you just got asked to do a talk or be a guest speaker or something like that. And be aware of how you're feeling physically. Change your physical state. We know this to be true from years of research that if you're just kind of like this, what triggered you to physically be in that posture? You can change that. Just what physically triggered you to be like, heck yeah. This is when I first started my business and I would sign a new client, my family could tell by the way I walked down the hall, and then I'd be like, yeah, and I'd be like, woo, woo, woo. And we'd do the happy dance, and we would be doing the happy dance. So things can trigger you for the happy dance stuff or the freak out stuff. You're in charge. So the bold action I want you to do today is to think of those 3 areas: situational, relational, and physical. Write those down, then start becoming aware of your behavior. When you're doing something that you don't like, what triggered that? And when you're celebrating something that's wonderful, what triggered that? I'm telling you, once you start really getting curious about how you show up in the world, it's super fun. Can I get a high five? Can I get some love for that? Go ahead and share that. Go ahead and tell me what you've recognized about your own triggers, and I will see you soon. Welcome to the Life and Biz Variety Show, where we are giving you a variety of breakthroughs and how-tos so you can have that big, bold life and biz that is right there for you. Talk to you soon.